New data shows that more Canadians have been struggling with their personal finances. Consumer insolvency rates are up. According to the latest numbers from the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, more than 37,000 Canadians filed for insolvency in the first quarter of 2026. Compared to the same time period last year, insolvencies are now up 8.5%. So I want to get more analysis on all of this with Blair Manton. He is president of Sands & Associates, a debt relief firm and largest network of licensed insolvency trustees in British Columbia. And they help people and small businesses with government-qualified debt solutions. Blair, thank you very much for coming to studio.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is a topic that a lot of people who are watching are going to be listening to with some interest because, you tell me, what does this tell us about how Canadians are, or what the state of Canadians' pocketbooks are right now, the fact that we're seeing this rise?
Well, I'm so thrilled to be with you today because there's so much shame and stigma about being in debt, and a lot of people feel like they're alone, they've made some bad decisions, they really suffer alone and in silence, often for far too long. But I think people need to know this is a very widespread problem right now, going up 8% nationally, even higher than that in BC. What I'm seeing day to day is the consumer is suffering like never before, and the main driver of it, what I'm seeing, is cost of living. So especially in the lower mainland here, folks are spending so much of their income on rent that there's a small gap in the budget every month that's often filled by credit, and eventually that credit can snowball to a point where it's out of control.
Can you talk to me about insolvency versus bankruptcy? Like, what does this actually mean if somebody is finding them in a situation where they are insolvent? Yeah,
I'm so happy we can kind of unpack that a little bit because sometimes people just read a headline and think, oh, bankruptcies are through the roof. It's not that case at all. The vast majority of people, sometimes 9 out of 10 people in some provinces, certainly within BC, they're not filing for bankruptcy at all. They're doing what's called a consumer proposal. So they're both remedies when you find yourself insolvent. Insolvent means you have more debt than you're able to pay. Okay, so that's just a term. Just because you're insolvent doesn't mean that you've done a bankruptcy or a proposal, but the numbers we're talking about means that you have taken a positive step to deal with your debt. Most people know when you file a bankruptcy, you're throwing your arms up saying, I can't do anything, I can't pay the debt back, I need relief. What people don't always know about is a consumer proposal where you make a deal with your creditors. You say, hey, I could go bankrupt, you might end up with nothing back. Let's make a deal where I'm going to pay zero interest, because the interest at 20 or 30% is what really drives people crazy, knowing you make payments every month, the debt doesn't go down. So a proposal brings the interest down to zero, and then you pay back what you can afford. Often it's about 30 cents on the dollar, something like that. And people have no idea these options exist, so they often suffer, maybe do things they shouldn't do to try to get out of debt, and they need to know more that there are really good regulated options that can help them move forward.
And if somebody is watching and says, I've been having trouble paying my bills, does that mean they're insolvent? At what point do they know that this is something that, they should take your advice here?
I think anyone that feels like they have a debt problem, it's worth having a conversation with a professional to just know what's out there. Sometimes there's a small budgetary adjustment they can make. Sometimes people are really on the verge of doing something that could really hurt them financially. I see people cashing in RRSPs because they're told by a creditor, sometimes a collection agent, I'm coming to get those RRSPs, you better cash them in or I'm going to take them anyway. They're a federally protected asset. No one can ever force you to cash in your retirement. But if you do that without knowing the rules around it, there's nothing that can be done. So I think people need to know there's good options. You can get all the information that you need. And the government created these really good options like a proposal or a bankruptcy to help people in tough situations. That's exactly what we're seeing now, a lot of people in really tough situations.
Right. Okay, well, let me talk about that a little bit. What does the data say about the current state of the Canadian economy? You say that you are seeing people who are struggling with the cost of living.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And we surveyed our client base for the last 15 years, and every year up until last year, the number one reason why people said they were in trouble is they blamed themselves. They said, mismanagement, I overextended myself, too much credit. The last 2 years now, people have said the number one reason is cost of living. So I see day in, day out in our offices, someone is earning $3,000, $3,500 a month after taxes. Their rent is now $2,000, $2,500. So you can imagine your rent should be about a third of your income, not 50% or 2/3. As soon as it's in that position, you've lost all flexibility. So if something happens, like a job loss, income interruption, maybe a sickness, there's no emergency fund, there's no safety net. People really have to rely on credit. And then after they're out of that tough time, the credit needs to be paid, and at 20% interest compounding every month, it can be really tough to get out of.
People who do, make that insolvency process, or take that step toward it, what are some of the fears that they talk about? What are they afraid of?
Yeah, everyone's afraid, obviously, that everyone's going to know, first off, and it's not a public thing. You know, if there were newspapers that published every insolvency, there'd be nothing else in the newspaper. There's that many. There's, 120,000 or so per year in Canada. So it's a very private process for the most part. A lot of times people are worried they're never going to recover from an insolvency. Everyone says your credit is destroyed for the rest of your life. Complete lie. The longest anything's ever going to be negative on your credit is for 6 years. And a proposal, for example, if you do that, you haven't filed a bankruptcy, you can say no to that question. Have you ever filed bankruptcy for the rest of your life? And the proposal is going to clear off your credit a year after you pay it off. So it's not a life sentence by any means. So the vast majority of people I see, if we sit down with them and game out two scenarios, one is you keep doing what you're doing, keep making those minimum payments, you'll be paying off even $5,000 or $6,000 of debt for decades. Or we say, let's do a proposal, your credit's going to take a temporary setback, but my gosh, you'll be out of debt. You can save some money. You can get ready for that mortgage in the future that you're going towards, which you're never able to save money if you've just got this debt burden that you're just rolling over each month.
Blair Minton, president of Sands & Associate. That's great advice. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.